principles of becoming an instructional leader or a principal in the school. And so it's basically what the state of Texas says principals need to be and the things that they need to implement and do on their campus. So we'll talk about them, and then we can say how we see them viewed or not viewed on the campus that we work at. And y'all can give me tips or encouragement, and I can tell you how I'll implement it. So the first one is school culture. Basically, the principal has to implement a shared vision of culture and high expectations for students, staff, and community partners. So, and also know how to work with stakeholders and community partners to get things needed for the school. So, how do we see that where we work?
How do we see how culture is school?
Yeah, how is our school culture on our campus?
Quite honestly, I think we have a lack of school culture. I don't think that there's very much unity within the school. And in the things that we do have, they aren't really motivated by admin, but rather by the teachers that work there or like the CIS workers and things like that.
Okay. You agree? Mm-hmm. So do I. Like the skills it says, or the things that the state wants to see in leaders with school culture is there's a system for gathering input and feedback from your staff, from your students, from the community. So they want to see that. Basically a leader who communicates well, and that the way that they communicate supports innovative thinking and inclusive cultures. That the leader has conflict management strategies, that there's different forms of written and verbal communication, just basically clear communication within everybody. And I agree with what you said that there is a lack thereof on the campus we're on right now. But a way that I would implement it, especially the communication part, is like a newsletter that goes out. There's a newsletter for staff, a newsletter that goes home to parents for students, a newsletter for the public so they know what's happening on our school. And it can go through emails, post it on social media. You know, there's so many outlets to where it could go.
That would be awesome.
Yeah. The next one is executive leadership. So the principal knows how to develop relationships with internal and external stakeholders, including, once again, communication for particular audiences. So this one is more focused on how you communicate with, like we have communities in schools, a program that comes onto the campus, or outside resources that you can bring on campus. So do we see that? Like we see communities and schools being done on our campus. So.
I think that there's still a big lack in it, but I would say that that's because of COVID. Because in the past, if you were a part of the Head Start program, they had they would celebrate things like Grandparents' Day, and the fathers would be able to come in. So I think that there's a big lack in that now because of the pandemic versus what has happened in the past.
I agree with that, because in the past on our current campus, we did have Donuts for Dad and Muffins with Mom. The Long Beach Police Department used to come on campus just to be a presence for the kids to see. So I do think the pandemic has played a big part on that not being seen as often as it is. And I would implement some of the things that we see. And also I would have like a PTA, a parent organization, because that's something that we are largely lacking.
I think the parental support is there, but
Absolutely.
The T part of the PTA isn't there.
Mm-hmm. And it's just important to allow for multiple perspectives from everybody, because I think where we are, a lot of it is one-sided, so like two-sided. Okay. The next one is leading learning. Lord have mercy. The entry-level principal knows how to collaboratively develop and implement high-quality instruction. So this is just all about rigorous instruction, making sure the curriculum that the campus is using is aligned with the TEKS or the pre-K guidelines. Make sure it can meet all students' needs. Make sure that there's an assessment for it, and that assessment data is being measured frequently, and things like that. And right now I don't see it, but in the past, on former campuses, I have seen it. So, anything to add?
Yeah, if I'm speaking of the experience that I'm in now, then I don't see it. We assess students, but we might only assess them at the beginning of the year, and then never have an end of the year assessment, or we might have an end of the year assessment and never have had a beginning of the year. So nothing's really measuring up. We really have no data to go on, and we're making huge decisions about these students, like whether they're going to have to go to the next grade or be retained based on inaccurate assessment data.
I agree. And I just think it's important for the principal to also still be very familiar with the TEKS, because I think I've noticed that sometimes the principal is so far removed from the classroom, they're not exactly sure what we're supposed to be teaching, and then they'll provide us with a curriculum that's not matching the TEKS.
It would be really great to see an administrator that also allows their teachers to have access to the TEKS. Because we are currently just logging on to the TEKS website and having a login as a guest versus having an actual login as a teacher.
That's true as well. That is absolutely.
So information for us is limited.
I agree, but I plan to never forget what it was like to be in the classroom when I become a principal, and I think if I keep that in mind, I'll cover all of the pillars. So. Okay, the next one is ethics, equity, and diversity. So being fair, making sure everyone's needs are met, all student needs are met based on race, their culture, their needs, their learning needs, disabilities, all of that. So the aligned skills is be culturally responsive for teaching best practice, be self-aware, know what's happening in your community, on your campus, what your students need, communicate once again, and maintain high expectations for all families and students. If something is wrong, address it right away, things like that. I think we somewhat see that on our campus. With the big Hispanic Heritage Month thing we did, they're aware, and us being IB now, they're pretty culturally aware of what's happening and implementing diversity. So that's something we got going. Anything to add on that pillar? No?
I disagree.
You disagree? Okay,
do
why do you
disagree.
disagree? Go ahead.
If we're talking about the pillars and role of an administrator,
Okay.
I don't think that those things are being
Done
projected by
admin.
the administrator.
Okay, I got
I
you.
think that it's
Staff.
other people and other staff on campus that are culturally conscious and aware, and so they're going to the administrator, and then the administrator is giving them that responsibility on top of their other
I
responsibilities.
can agree with
And that's why
that.
those things are happening. But I don't think it's the administrator themselves being culturally aware of what's going on, especially when an administrator only knows at least 7 kids' names.
I agree. It's not that the administrator is not being culturally unaware. They just unaware of everything. Yeah, that's the truth,
When
man.
you're being a principal from an office, it is very hard to
That
meet
is so true.
pillars.
I mean, honesty is the best policy, child. You're right. But an effective principal accepts and respects all cultural backgrounds, customs, traditions, values, and communication assets. As a person, I already do that. I don't think it'll change with a new role. Okay, the next pillar is leading learning once again, but this one is more about monitoring class and assessing classroom instruction, so walkthroughs and observations. And for me, I know walkthroughs and observations are a big part of being a principal, but I want to focus on the coaching because in my personal experience, I can get all the feedback in the world, but if you're not telling me how to correct it, then what's the reason, essentially?
Right.
And because I get it great marks as a teacher, which is wonderful, but I know everything ain't perfect, but then you're telling me that this isn't, but you're not telling me what to do to fix it. And then we don't get classroom visits just for coaching. It's just we get our walkthrough and I'm out and we hear nothing else. So I just want to make sure when I'm doing that part, I'm there for the coaching as well.
I think I agree with you, but in a way I disagree with you. I disagree because I think that there are a select few who do receive the coaching.
Okay.
But I think that the majority of us do not. If you are a team lead or whatever you want to call it, or your favorite teacher on the hall, you receive more opportunities to be coached versus just the random teacher who tries their best every day.
That's true. And this pillar also looks at being aware of the student work. So if you look overall at the student data, it's important for the principal to know exactly what the campus needs overall and then implement a curriculum or a plan to have the students reach those goals.
I think that is doing, excuse me, I think that our administration is growing in that area by implementing things like Math Shelf, and Texas Kia and CLI, because if they're used correctly, you can measure data from that. But it's just different in a Montessori setting when your lessons don't always match what match the TEK or what the student is being assessed on.
Yeah, I agree with that. And then another way that the principal can monitor data, in my old campus we had a data room. And so it was split by grade level, and then it was split by teacher, and every teacher had to post their kids' reading level, their math scores, and so anybody could just go in and look and be like, okay, well, we need to work on this with this teacher and with this grade level. And that way the whole campus was aware of what the student needs, and then the teacher, she knew it like the back of her hand. So I think that that's important too. And then if you're in the classroom or you walk by and you see a teacher is teaching something wrong, this says that the principal needs to provide in the moment feedback instead of maybe just pushing it under the rug, you know what I mean?
I will say I have experienced that.
Okay. Okay. Me too.
It wasn't nice, but I did experience it.
Mine wasn't nice either, and it ended in a debate, but that's okay. Communication is great. I'm glad I had the open door to go and communicate about it. It is what it is. Okay. Human capital. The principal knows how to promote high quality teaching by using selection, placement, and retention practices to promote teacher excellence and growth. And so it says ways you can do that. You want to have high performing teachers that can generate 5 to 6 months of student learning each year. So the principal knows how to find teachers who promote high performing students, high quality teachers, I think is what the state calls them. So ways for the principal to find those candidates within the pool. I think that's all well and great, but I also believe that maybe if it's somebody who might be a little struggling with proper coaching and feedback, they could become that high performing teacher.
I will say, when I started, I was not a high quality teacher, but I've worked at a campus that was like, well, let's get you the training. Let's get you the resources, and that administrator pushed that, and gave me those opportunities, which helped me where I am. And I do grow every year, but I grow because I choose to grow, not because I have an administrator that's pushing or providing opportunities for me to grow.
Yeah. Same. That's why I'm in this program. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Ways that we can make these high quality teachers, as I could do that as a principal, is consistently coach teachers toward goals, communicate proactively. Oh, I like that word, proactive. Amen. And then find the difference between high performing and low performing teachers. That's the main thing, is how I as a principal be able to differentiate that. And then retention. How could I retain teachers? I think if I was a principal on my campus right now that I work, I think the main way to retain a teacher is just to say thank you.
To be
Let them know they
encouraged.
appreciate
To be encouraged, yes. You know what? I see what you're doing. Thank you. Thank you for your hard work. Honestly, at this point, thank you for showing up today. Because there's many days where I just be like, why am I going? So I think a simple thank you can go a long way, and then there's other ways to motivate and encourage your staff as well.
I've worked at a campus that an administrator had a board up where she congratulated teachers and teachers congratulated teachers. So it could be as simple as her saying, I walked in Miss So-and-so's class today, and I noticed that all of her kids were quiet. With the campus I came from, that was a big deal. And so it was a shout-out board. And she did that her first year there. And the year before, we lost 14 teachers, but that year, only 2 teachers left.
See?
So that definitely increased
Yeah,
retention. We were appreciated,
yeah,
so we all wanted to stay.
yeah. I'm telling you, a simple thank you can go a long way. A long way. And that was all my pillars. Thank y'all for your feedback and communicating with me.
No problem. You're gonna make a great administrator. She's gonna make a great administrator.